All right, well, the best way to get good at measuring is to measure stuff. So you can use your little cheat sheet here, keep it off to the side. You might want to refer to that. If you were in class, then I tried to give all the students that were there a copy of some work here that we could do some measuring with. Now, here's the deal. If you didn't get this in class, then there's a copy that I can send you digitally that you can use. You just have to make sure you print it right. So when you go to print it, you want to make sure that it prints out the right size. And the way you can tell if it's the right size is up in the top right corner here, there is a little line that says 1 inch. Make sure that that line really measures 1 inch. And if it does, you know you printed this out right. Now, if it's a different size, then your printer settings are not correct. Usually with a PDF file, we print it out full size instead of fit the paper or scale to fit. Okay? So make sure the 1 inch really prints out at 1 inch if you want to print this out the right size. And then do some measuring exercises here with me. I'm going to start with the left-hand side here. I'm going to work my way down. And the idea is to start at the 0, right? Because that's where measurements are taken on the scale. And then let's go down and let's find out what the measurements are. And then when you've got the measurement, let's write the measurement in the box at the end of the line. And I know this is kind of like something you might do in a math class, when you're learning about measurement. This is really the best way to learn how to use the tool. So you want to go through and you want to see if you can measure. Now look, there's no mystery or secret here. I'm not trying to test you or bing you if you get it wrong, but we simply want to find out if you can measure correctly. Right, so while I am going to show you the answers, what you really want to do is you really want to go in there and start measuring and make sure your measurements match up with my measurements. Okay, and if you find that they don't, if you're unable to measure, well, then we're going to go back and figure out where it's not working out for you. Alright, so I'm going to go through, I'm going to add some measurements to here. At the end, you can verify that your measurements are the same as my measurements. And then we know we're measuring things correctly. Now, measuring lines, not really a lot of fun, to be honest with you. So what we should do is we should simulate maybe measuring an object. Something that we are going to pick up and maybe take some measurements on so we can draw it. So I found a little piece of metal, it's got rounded corners, I want to make a sketch of it, and on that sketch I'm going to write the measurements. So, how big is this from the left to the right side? Looks like it's 5 inches. So the system for adding the measurements involves adding this little scaffolding of lines around the object. And then we write the measurement here in the center of this line that has an arrow at each end. Now, up here, I wrote little double tick marks for all my measurements because they're in inches. But the reality is, you don't have to. The assumption in the United States, if I see the number 5, we're working in inches, so that's 5 inches. I was going to assume it's 5 feet or 5 miles. Okay? There's suffixes you'd add. There's marks you add to indicate feet and miles. 5 by itself is 5 inches. So it's totally optional to add the inch mark. We're working in inches. On the side here, I'll take a measurement. And I don't have to measure the object. These lines line up with it pretty tight. And we're looking at what that measurement is. And then just something to keep in mind is, since we're measuring with an architect scale, we want to measure and record measurements in fractions. A lot of you are comfortable with decimals, and that's great. We want to be able to work with fractions. Now this measurement is kind of a special deal. I want to measure the diameter of the hole. So we see, instead of this scaffolding of extension lines and dimension lines, I've got an arrow pointing to the circle and a place to write the dimension. So what we're looking for is the diameter of this circle. We're looking for the distance from one side of the circle to the other through the center point. There is a symbol that we use to indicate diameter. It's a circle with a slash through it. So when we see that circle and slash, understand that means diameter. Right? And now the diameter is that much. And then when we're working with a rounded corner, a radius, a fillet, well, that's a different measurement. And we're just measuring from the center point of the radius out to the edge. Right? And now radius also has an abbreviation. The abbreviation is R. Right, so R is radius, and I would write down the measurement of that radius. Okay, so we've added some dimensions using the fractional ruler on the edge of our architect scale. We're measuring to the nearest 1/16 of an inch, and if you got all the same measurements that I did, then you're doing super.